in studying transportation methods, and particularly in the air, I came back to the wheel, and the more interested my studies in this direction became, the great simplicity of the fact that turning it over on its side in another dimension, it might be the ultimate in new forms of transportation. This was the inspiration.
You studied, you say. What were your sources of study?
In New York City, I had access to the Columbia University Physics Library and also to New York University Physics Library. I had a very good fortune to work with a Yale graduate physicist. He and I had a laboratory for 2.5 years prior to World War II, and it was through these experimentations and continued study that we had the inspiration for electrifying a wheel and putting it in the air.
What is your scientific background?
It has been individual research associated with several scientists. This one in New York, we had the very good fortune when we were a youth there in the middle 20s to know Nikola Tesla and to have many conferences with him on electricity, induction coils, and electrical power.
Well, you knew these people, but did you have any kind of formal scientific education?
No formal education whatsoever.
Well, for example, have you been to a university?
I've never only been into their libraries, never studied.
What is your education then?
We left school at the age of 13.
Do you always speak with the editorial we?
It's become customary.
Why, I wonder?
I don't feel very much alone in this. I always feel like that either my model or myself or other associates, I just don't feel alone.
This developed since you started this company and began getting investors interested in the...
This is true, yes.
The wheel laying on its side, huh?
That's right.
Well, now, you didn't go to college. You had no formal education to speak of. I still can't understand whether you knew these scientists or not. I can't understand how you were able to acquire the necessary knowledge to perfect a machine as intricate and complex as a space machine.
Well, basically, the principle is very simple and needs no spatial knowledge to put into practice. However, any 100 good books will give us all of the present knowledge on electricity, electromagnetism, and gravity, and I think that we have explored thousands of those. The study was continuous up until a few months ago, when actual physical development has taken all of our time, so that I don't think we lack in education as relates to the necessities that are needed here.
Well, you have the model of the spaceship with you, and I wonder if very briefly and in the simplest terms you can explain it to me and to our audience.
We would like to say that first, it's electrically powered. This means that it has an electromotive force system. It has an electromagnetic system and a gravity system. These three combined powers causes our craft to function. The reason it functions is because it's geometrically designed to become independent of the Earth's gravity field when it equals it at any spot. This is the inertial field of attraction of a larger mass and a smaller mass, the model being the smaller mass, so that when it spins at a speed electrically with a force field in the skin, which is equal to the Earth's spin geometrically by dimension, then this craft becomes airborne.
Is this the only model that exists of the
No,
craft?
indeed. We have a 6-foot model in Apple Valley at our plant that has had a lot of work on it. It has had a few rotation tests and only has about 90 days more of work until it can be flight tested.
Does that mean flight tested into space?
No, not into space, just to levitate and to check out electrical principles.
Well, now, I would imagine you have presented your plans and ideas to the federal government, haven't you?
We did in the beginning. When we started and introduced our principle in Baltimore publicly at a press conference, it was the same week that the Russians put the first Sputnik into the sky, and the beginning of this era of the space age was born unquestionably. So there was a lot of excitement. Man had certainly proven that a satellite would orbit under its own power if the velocity was great enough. We went to the Defense Department and offered our plan to them, and they were highly interested, but our lack of manufacturing facilities, the very fact that we were beginning and had not established ourselves, I believe, caused a lack of interest. At least we were turned down.
Well, now, don't you think that if the National Space Agency really felt that your ship would successfully launch men into space, they would drop everything that they were doing and give you all of the money and assistance that you possibly would need to get this project going?
We feel that within months, our activity at the plant on the Bear Valley Road, that this will take place. What materializes there in the next few months, we feel that there will be worldwide attention to our activities.
Well, what government agencies have you talked to, for example?
To the Defense Department.
Any other agencies?
Directly, only to the Defense Department.
And specifically to whom in the Defense Department?
This was the Brigadier General Conway in the office of the Secretary of Defense in 1957.
And you're saying that while the government turned you down in the past, you feel that in the very near future they will sponsor you?
I don't think there's any question when we show physical flight demonstrations that there will be plenty of interest shown on all sides.
Well, now, you have stated, Mr. Carr, that the principle of your spaceship is as easy to understand as an automobile storage battery and a toy spinning top. If it is that simple, then why is it that other men haven't discovered this?
There's a possibility that there have been some successful discoveries along this line. It is a radical departure from the normal procedure of known physics, and nevertheless it is true physics. Apparently, until a physical demonstration comes along, people will be skeptical. However, we have made these demonstrations. They have been classified and quiet, but very soon they will be publicly
Now,
made.
are you using the editorial we
Yes.
again?
Yes, sir. Editorial we.
You have made actual demonstrations?
Yes, sir.
Can you go into any detail about them?
The only detail was that in one model that we built, handmade ourselves, we had 6 successful flights, a crack up each time, and we kept refining it, and we lost this craft in flight.
To what distance did they go?
Well, this one went out of sight. The others that I had time fused to go about 1,000 feet high.
Mm-hmm. And what was the size of these?
The total outside diameter of this craft was close to 6 feet.
In an article appearing in the Desert Valley News Herald about how the OTC-X1 works, it states that your discoveries, I quote, will let men of this generation visit their neighbors on other planets. Do you believe there are beings on other planets?
Yes, I'm firmly convinced that we're not alone in this vast universe.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Carr, recently in Los Angeles there was a series of lectures given by such men as Dr. Edward Teller, Ralph Cordner, president of General Electric, Congressman Bruce Hayes of the House Committee on Space, Dr. Joseph Kaplan of UCLA, General Jimmy Doolittle, and Frederick Capel, president of the American Telephone and Telegraph Company. Now, these men all agreed that getting into space was a complex and challenging job. They also indicated that it is hardly as simple as a storage battery and a spinning top. Again, I ask you, why do you think that these apparently brilliant men are so incredibly stupid as not to grasp your understanding of this problem?
They've done a brilliant job with rockets, but look how long rockets were invented before any real use was made of them. Getting into space by blasting in the high gravity strain of high velocity is truly a complex job. The successes that have been made with rockets and missiles, I think, is almost incredible and phenomenal. But there is an easier way, and it is my way, and this is recognized now by some scientists. Dr. Herman Oberth flatly stated in a press release when he left this country after working here for several years as an expert in the field of rocketry, that when man went into space, it would be by an electrically powered craft, circular in design, protected by an electrical wind. We say force field instead of electrical wind. And where a force field is, a a ship can travel in absolute comfort without friction.
Have you gone to any of the major industries, the major companies in our nation, and approached them about...
In the beginning, we were negotiating with one of the largest of the aircraft companies when the missile and rocket program first begun to become a paramount issue in the country. This was in 1952. And our negotiations were moving along in a rather comfortable vein of possibility of building one of these craft in 52. But a series of incidents took place. The president of this company passed on. Some of the engineers that were working with me were lost, and my contacts were completely closed, although I did approach the United States government through the Department of Commerce. They showed interest providing I presented a working model. And this, of course, I was unable to do at this time, and that was no other contacts have been made with large corporations.
Are you prepared to offer your services to the government or accept just a salary to assist in the production of the OTC-X1?
I feel that having originated this company, that I will continue to be the head of it until success has been materialized. I will at all times cooperate with our government in any program that has to do with the progress of America.
But at this point, while you are hopeful there will be government interest and government activity in your project, there has been absolutely none.
There has been none to date. No, sir.
We'll continue in a moment.
Thank you, sir.
And I'll be back following this message. My guest is Otis T. Carr, who claims to have invented a spaceship. Mr. Carr, in 1959, you got into some difficulties with the Securities Exchange Commission. They brought a court action against you, and during that court action, they charged that on December the 7th, 1959, you claimed your spaceship would take off and return on the 15th of December. You would be captain, Norman Colton would be flight engineer, and Hildegard Shea would be flight commissar. Now, you have indicated to me before that you don't know why Miss Shea was identified as commissar.
No, sir, I don't.
You don't feel there was any subversive plot?
I don't believe so. No, sir.
Well, now, why didn't you take off? At this point, all you have is this model and an unfinished 6-foot in diameter scale model.
We claimed from the beginning, we still make this claim, that starting from scratch, within 6 months, we can build a craft that can be manned, that will take off, leave our atmosphere, orbit the moon, and return. We can do it within 6 months of any time with men, money, and material.
And you were selling stock in this claim?
We had some securities, some of my own, and we had a plan, and we were operating under legal counsel. We established ourselves in Oklahoma City and built a 45-foot exhibition space ride, which is still in operation as an amusement and educational device.
Because that's completely apart from this very serious thing.
Right, but it was also planned to sustain our financial activity in order to build the full manned craft.
Now, I want to get into that in just a moment. First, let me get into a little of your personal background. Before getting into this business, what was your occupation?
I started to study in New York science in the 20s, and in order to maintain myself, I started in hotel work because they are open 24 hours a day, and you could get employment most any time, hours you want.
What did you do in a hotel?
Most of the time I was a desk clerk. And all the while that I carried on my experiments during the war in Baltimore and maintained my own little workshop laboratory, I was the desk clerk at the Southern Hotel. 13 years.
You say that you had to sustain yourself while studying. The studying was all books that you got out of university libraries.
That's right, and other libraries.
And you first started raising money for this spaceship in Baltimore?
That's right, in Baltimore.
Why did you pick Baltimore?
Well, I had been there. I came to Baltimore at the beginning of the war. I had my little research laboratory in New York. I closed it up because I expected to go into the service. I wasn't called into the service, and my family was in Baltimore, and I moved there and became actively engaged in the war effort as related to housing, which was the hotel business.
Now, the OTC Enterprises is a Maryland corporation, isn't it?
It was, yes, sir. It still is. It's OTC Enterprise Incorporated.
In 1957, the Baltimore Better Business Bureau claims that they requested from you data which would tend to substantiate your claims, but they received none. Now, why didn't you cooperate with them at that time?
We did cooperate with the Baltimore Better Business Bureau. We took all of the material that we had and presented it to them. Apparently, they wanted to see a flight demonstration. We weren't able to make one. We didn't have one built. Now, anything else that they asked for, we gave them.
You gave them blueprints, in other words.
We showed them what we had, the material we had available for publication at the time.
Now, you say you were selling stock in your company while you were in Maryland.
This is true.
Do you have any idea of the amount of money you raised in Maryland?
Well, the bookkeeping records, all of the material relating to this are in the hands of the Securities Exchange Commission. We accepted a restraining order, an injunction from them, and don't expect to do anything in this field until this has been lifted by the proper legal procedure.
But then you moved to Oklahoma City, didn't you?
This is true.
When was that, in 58?
Yes, we had the opportunity in Oklahoma City to interest the operators of Frontier City in building the 45-foot space exhibition ride and also getting the financing to build the 6-foot model which was to be flight tested.
In other words, you're really in two businesses. You're building a spaceship perhaps for Disneyland or some other amusement park.
This is true.
And you're building a spaceship to actually go in space.
That is true. Each one is a facsimile of the other. The other is an operational model, and one is just a stationary.
Well, why do you think the SEC has given you such a bad time? Do you think they're just cynical about spaceships?
I don't think so, sir. I believe that they naturally have to follow the procedures that are correct, and apparently we made error.
Or was there an injunction against you selling stock in Maryland at the time you left?
Not to my knowledge, no, sir. This injunction was never set up until it was accepted in Oklahoma City.
You did sell stock in Oklahoma, too, then?
There was some transfer of securities there.
I got a little confused in my questioning. Did you tell me how much you think you collected in investments in Maryland?
Sir, I wouldn't like to make a statement on that. Those figures are in the proper legal authorities, and I'd rather not make a public statement on it.
Well, it's a matter of public record, though,
yes,
isn't it?
Sir. Well, if it's available, I don't have exact figures.
Well, an approximate figure.
I believe that the total amount of funds that have been put into our activity to date would run close to $300,000.
So I was fairly modest when I said $185,000.
Well, now, you're speaking there of securities. Much of this is personal loan.
I see. Well,
business.
Was I fairly correct then in securities?
I believe that this is probably correct.
And in
or
Oklahoma,
near to be correct.
In Oklahoma, approximately, what did you raise when you went into that state?
Well, it's cost a considerable amount to build this space ride at Oklahoma City. I think it's around $35,000. We built the 6-foot prototype model, which was to be flight tested there, which has never had the opportunity to be flight tested.
Well, the problem is...
It cost around $60,000.
Yeah. Your problems, I gather, are the fact that you were selling securities in Oklahoma and you were not licensed to sell them.
There was a technicality involved there, domestication in Oklahoma, and we had filed the proper procedure and was following legal counsel, but apparently wasn't doing it correctly.
Yeah, because in fact, on June the 5th, 1959, I believe the United States District Court for the Western District of Oklahoma did enter a permanent injunction against you from further violations.
That's right,
yeah.
Yes, sir.
Well, now, people must have been aware that you were having these difficulties. Why did they want to invest in your company?
I think people want to see this succeed because an awful lot of people know it's correct.
Well, they can't know scientifically that it's correct.
Some of them can. We have validation from a scientific laboratory here on the West Coast, made in, I think, in either 57 or the early part of 58, where they say we have run a test as you claim and find it to be accurate and correct.
Is there any generalization you can make about the kind of people who invest in your company? Are they older people, retired people, for example?
No, sir. I think it's just a cross-section of Americans who want to see this succeed.
Of course, basically, maybe they want to see it succeed. We'd all like to see our nation get into space, but
Right.
I would say that basically people gave you money because they trusted you and believed that you would eventually make a profit for them.
I believe so.
Well,
I think we will.
Taking that into consideration, during the hearings against you, you invoked the Fifth Amendment 34 times, and according to the SEC, refused to testify or furnish any information with reference to the sale of stock, the issuance of deposit receipts, and the solicitation of money from the public. I wonder, do you think this is the best way to gain friends in the business world?
This was a hearing. This was not a trial. It was a hearing, and I was operating under the advice of counsel.
But forgetting counsel for a moment and thinking in terms just of public relations, do you think this was a way to make friends with the public and get them to put their trust in you?
I couldn't tell you that, sir. I'm not qualified to answer. We've never hesitated to answer any questions about our business, how we plan to build our craft, and we finally now have, after 3 years of struggle, a very fine factory area in the high desert, a magnificent building and offices. We're starting to remodel them for machinery.
Are you still getting personal loans?
I would rather not discuss any part of my finances as relates to this.
But I'm not trying to press you on your finances, but
Yes,
you
sir.
you are in a position where you're able to continue. You're not being held back.
I've been able to continue,
No.
yes, sir.
You were convicted in November of 1959 for violating the Oklahoma Securities Act and fined $5,000. Have you paid that fine as yet?
We have appealed that.
It's on appeal.
Yes, sir.
Well, is this the appeal in which your attorney, Hubert Gibson, has stated that you are practically destitute and without means of paying the fine?
I don't know that he made this statement, and I don't know what his appeal papers are, but he did file the appeal, and I trust my attorney.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's doing the right thing.
It's always a good thing to trust the attorneys and the doctors, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Carr, do you feel that you'll shortly be able to resolve all these problems you're having with the SEC and go ahead and build your spaceship?
I'm certain that we will be able to do so.
You don't think they'll continue to block you from
I'm
conducting
certain we
business?
do the right thing.
Well, thank you very much for talking with me. It's been a pleasure seeing you.
Thank you, sir.